All right, we're back here. 2 rounds left to go. 4 players still in it. Pop up the bracket and show you who they are. Who you're rooting for is up to you, but who we're going to watch is going to be Harian Firer against Mattew Watts, Mono White Aggro versus Mono Green Devotion. If things play out as we think they might, and Adam Watts Moses and his 80-card Kiora deck is still playing against Nathaniel Wilson's Angels, we'll move over to that, time permitting. But we're going to start with Harian versus Matthew, Mono White versus Mono Green. A matchup that if you're playing either one of these decks, you probably run into fairly often.
100%. Yeah, the Mono White deck is a deck that is kind of built to kind of prey on decks failing and also use things like Brave the Elements to push through these other monocolor decks, and particularly Mono Green. It's a matchup where I feel like I'd almost rather be on the play than be on a deck. But I think the Mono White deck is ever so slightly favored, and being on the play here for Harian, it's a pretty good spot to be a Harian Firer fan.
All right. Well, we'll see if that plays out or not. We'll go into the table when the players are ready, which appears to be now. We'll get the interface updated a little bit. We are in the semifinals now. Your eyes aren't fooling you. And
yeah, this wasn't the fabled 4th match of the quarterfinals we got to watch.
Well, that would be odd also, because that means Harian played twice. But I guess if you beat 2 people in the quarterfinals, maybe you get to skip the semifinals. I don't know. I do know the qualifications for at MTG 30 for the big modern qualifiers for the beta draft event. If you qualified twice, Friday and Saturday, then in the top 32, you got paired against effectively yourself and got a bye into the top 16. I thought that was pretty neat.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah. All right. Bodyguard into play for Harian, and we are underway.
Yeah, and Lenore Elf here from Matthew, so both players kind of having their ideal starts.
Mm-hmm. Luminarch Aspirant means this Lenore Elf, even if it had intentions of trading, will not have that available to it.
Yeah, and these are the kind of starts you want to see if you're Harian. 1 drop into one of our powerful 2 drops, ideally not a Thalia quite yet. You only really want that if there's a Kiora on the other side of the table. And it looks like we're going to get Wolfwillow Haven into something for Matthew.
I think we got 2 more elves.
Oh my.
Yeah, we are ramping all the way through. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana on the board on turn 2. So untapping on turn 3 with able to do almost anything.
Yeah, we do see Harian here getting a Luminarch Aspirant big and slamming in for 6.
Yeah, that's great. Boy, it's a little frightening though what these green decks are capable of doing with a lot of mana.
Yeah, and Harian here is just kind of shaking his boots like, okay, no Storm the Festivals, don't anything good. I can pressure you. Maybe I can rip a Brave the Elements and end this. But, Matthew can cast every single spell in his deck right now.
Okay, let's see what it's going to be. There's a Sylvan Caryatid. That's not going to do much. There's a Karn.
Yeah, and, we can Karn to go grab something like a Heart of Kiora, which can actually block some of these creatures. So... that could be something. Ooh.
Okay, there's Nykthos too. That's 1 extra mana.
Little Ancient Tomb impersonation.
There's
Oath of Nissa, so we get a relook.
Okay. If there's Oath of Nissa, then we probably fire that off first, right?
Yeah, that one's typically pretty free for you to use before activating Nykthos. As long as you still have, a mana floating, you make it back off the devotion. And let's see what Matthew gets here. I think that's Teferi and another Nykthos.
Okay, it's definitely Nykthos, and I think Wolfwillow. I didn't make it the 3rd card, but Teferi would now be castable with the Oath of Nissa on the board.
Yeah, and Teferi, Carlin's going to take a little double check here on Teferi who slows the sunset. We can pull that up for the watchers at home. Often you think about this as a more of a combo card, which it kind of does. Lets you untap Chainveil more, but it also minuses in order to go anticipate essentially. Look at the top 3 and add 1 to your hand. So with Teferi who slows the sunset there, you can sometimes actually refuel. So it's kind of like getting another redo here. Here's the Teferi.
Yeah, if we're looking for a defensive card with Karn, you mentioned Heart of Kiora. Is the Silex card that a lot of these decks are playing now, that comes into play tapped, right? So that's live for next turn if you're still alive. Also, it would cost you all your own permanents, so that's not super ideal.
Yeah, also, it looks like Matthew has gone with no Silex this weekend. So He has chosen to have some other things like a Shadow Spear in the sideboard for these sort of matchups instead, as a way to kind of beat them. But yeah, look, Teferi coming down and then lets you untap the Elf and the Nykthos and generate a little extra more mana. Ooh. So it should be, I think, 7 mana after everything's said and done. I could be mistaken.
Well, let's see. The Caryatid summoning sick. We have Devotion of 6.
Yeah, I think there's one floating, but I could be mistaken.
Okay, if there's one floating, then you're right. Yeah, I don't see an indicator of that one way or the other.
Yeah.
So Matthew, with all this on the board now, just looking for a way to survive the turn, probably. So maybe your Heart of Kiran does make sense.
Yeah, and so this is the thing to note is we might not have an I-win combo here, but if we grab the Chainville here and we have Teferi still when we untap, then we have Teferi with the Llanowar Elf and the Nykthos enough devotion that we can actually just gain infinite life.
Okay, so there was enough. There's enough mana floating that Isika's Chariot actually is the play. So that's going to handle everything barring a Brave the Elements.
Yeah, and big draw step here for Harlan. Instantly doing some math. Looks like he picked up Shefet Dunes, so he does have Brutal Cathar available to him now.
I guess Brutal Cathar not looking. I mean, there's not like a prime target. I guess it's something.
Yeah, you have to do something to get through this board state and kill the Karn or the Teferi. Otherwise, you are just dead. So maybe Brutal Cathar can like try to eat a cat, which will then crew the chariot. So you're like down one blocker.
This is a pretty disgusting turn for Matthew. Turn 3 for Matthew Watts here, really going wide on the board.
Yeah, not a bad turn 4. This mono green deck, I think, might be good.
Yeah, maybe so. It's it's not overrated.
It's hard to know. It's really hard to know after everything happening today. You know, I saw one of them lose in the top 8. So who gets that?
True. All right, so here comes the attack. There are just 2 blockers. So the Karn is vulnerable here, if that's the way Harlan chooses to go.
Yeah, that'll probably be the case since you can't actually kill the Teferi for sure. But yeah, Harlan dodging disaster there. And kind of just shows how good the mono green deck is, right? It was like, yeah, this isn't much, but it's actually presenting lethal. And that was a Storm of the Festival, Joe.
Wow. Okay. So we got Teferi, we got Nykthos, we got mana. We don't have like infinite devotion, but it's certainly plentiful.
Yeah, I think that we have 6 because there's an elf hiding off screen.
Okay, so, here we go. There's a Karn and a Cavalier. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to think that that's pretty close to being wrapped up here if Matthew goes for the Chainville line. Yeah, and he's probably just saying it to Harlan.
Yeah.
And so let's head back to the booth for a second here.
Okay. Oof. Well, yeah, that was, I mean, those turn 3s, I mean, yeah, the Karn was killed, but well, there was the anticipate coming and then it wasn't even necessary. Storm of the Festival hits the nuts and it's done. All right, let's go ahead and look at some deck lists, see what Harlan needs to do to come back here being down a game. Brave the Elements, obviously good, getting through all the blockers. What do you like out of the board?
Yeah, so there's a couple options. So Thalia Heretic Cathar kind of stops some amount of combo turns where it makes non-basic lands enter tapped and creatures enter tapped. So if you try to go off with the Cavalier and you're not quite there yet, and you're trying to use a Storm to get to it, that's going to make it not as likely to happen. And if you're on the play like Harlan is for this game, well, then Thalia is going to be able to make it so if your opponent trying to develop something like an Olgo Troll or Cavalier after turn 3, then they're not going to be able to block and you're able to push a little bit of damage. So I really like that card in this matchup, especially when you're on the play. We might see some amount of Portable Hole or Declaration Stone. Really depends on how Harlan wants to approach it. My guess is that Deck and Stone would be the one that Harlan wants to play. So 1 more mana, but it answers all the Cavaliers or all the Old Growth Trolls, which can often clog up the battlefield.
Sure. No, that definitely makes sense. And we can look over at Matthew Watts's. I mean, we did see a green player sideboard a card a couple hours ago. So maybe we'll see that again.
Yeah, it's possible. We have the second Skyboat here, and the interesting thing about Skyboat is it's a removal spell in this matchup specifically because it is colorless and deals 3 damage, which is good enough to beat Brave the Elements and get through most of the creature's power toughness ratio. So you could see one of those come in for maybe something like Teferi, which is normally more of a combo card, despite it winning us that game.
So, well, did it win us that game? It didn't actually do anything.
Well, we didn't get to see it, but
maybe it was intending. Maybe it had intentions, but I don't think it actually did anything.
That's fair. I guess it didn't do that much. It put the fear in Harlan, though, at least. It made some choices happen. Fatigue's a real thing. We've been playing Magic all weekend here.
Yeah, that's true.
Harlan Fear's team lost playing for top 8 yesterday, so or was in contention.
All right, well, maybe he can take his revenge out on Mattew Watts right now and advance on to the finals. We will see players shuffling up, getting ready for game number 2. Thanks for being with us here this weekend at Nerd Rage Gaming. We have got 1.5 rounds to go.
Yeah,
Harlan's here looking for the comeback.
We're really close to crowning that champion. So make sure to click that follow button if you haven't already. That way you can check out our next one in Chicago here the weekend of Thanksgiving on the 26th.
Question for the chat. How's the Angel deck doing? The Angel deck is playing right now on the other table in the top 4.
Yep, and with how quick that game went, and typically if Harlan's winning a game, it's going to go about that quickly too. We're probably going to get to see some of the Angel deck, so stay tuned.
The Angel deck is playing against Adam Watts Formosa's 80-card white Yorion deck. So, well, I just assume 80 cards. It might be 83. I don't know, but it's a white Yorion deck. We know that much.
Yeah, it has a lot of cards, and it is thick. And that's sometimes all you need. It is surprising to see Yorion still in the format. I mean, I guess it hasn't done like it did in Modern. So maybe it's just like, it's cool to keep it here for now. But some of the reasons listed to get rid of Yorion, like the dexterity stuff, do still exist. So an interesting choice there.
I didn't like that explanation. I don't mind them banning it in Modern, but I didn't like the explanation because it kind of doesn't make sense that allowing to keep it in the other formats if that's the reason you're doing it.
Yeah. It's so awkward. My guess is, and obviously I don't know for sure, but my guess is that the difference is that the perspective from players was that 4-color was the best deck or one of the best decks. Yep. And so I had friends who just couldn't play 4-color because, their hands were too small. They couldn't actually randomize their deck in time, and it was like a real hassle for them. And so I guess like when you feel forced to play it versus it's a thing you get to do. But I imagine that, we might see it get banned if, Adam's mono white deck here continues to do well and then does well at DreamHack Dallas and maybe some of the other RCs around the world. We might see Yorion go there again because a lot of the reasons do overlap.
Maybe. Then we're just left with it in Legacy. That'd be too bad.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. The companion experiment was very cool and limited, and even with the added limitation of having to pay 3 mana, it didn't quite probably work out as intended and constructed.
Yeah. I think companions would have been good even if you do the change I'm about to say, but the difference in hybrid mana versus blue and white and black and white, for example, with Loris and Yorion, is a big difference because you get to see decks like this mono white deck just be mono white for the most part and not have to worry about Yorion and still get it. Whereas if it was, an Azorius card hardcore, it'd be a little bit harder and we would have seen a little bit of nerf to the companions, but I still think we would have seen a lot of dominance from the 2 main big ones.
All right, lots of shuffling here, and still more. So the players aren't quite feeling ready yet. There we go.
Shuffled more than we played.
I mean, that happens sometimes. Sometimes you get, and it seemed like there was a pause in the shuffling too. So I wonder if they were both having conversation with the judge or the other players for a moment there. But it also, I mean, you can kind of just go into a trance when you're shuffling sometimes, and then not really realize how much you're overdoing it. Harlan draws up his opening hand. A couple lands. I saw a 1-drop and a Brutal Cathar. We'll see if he thinks it's good enough.
Yeah, Harlan is on the play, so we might just see him keep all these 1s and try and, top deck something like Luminarch Aspirant with Thalia's Lieutenant. The deck has a lot of really strong 2s, which is one of the big draws to the mono white deck. Looks like Matthew is probably keeping and putting her card back.
The players were shuffling simultaneously, though. So, yeah, okay, we're both on a mulligan then. All right.
Okay. I guess they just both snapped mulligan while we were talking to chat there, so that's on us.
All right. So same opening as last time. Matthew's like, I didn't read this the first time. I just assumed, but let me take a look at it now.
Yeah. And we do see the Skyboat in hand for Matthew, so it might be the one main deck one, but it might also just be, brought in.
Well,
I think he picked up a Thalia's Lieutenant.
Okay. If Matthew develops anything like last game, then that Skysovereign will be a great turn 3 play. We'll see. Here's Hopeful Initiate.
Yeah, and this is sometimes the problem with against the mono green deck is Old Growth Troll is such a house in this deck. It completely stops the aggression here. So now you need something like Brutal Cathar. And if that wasn't there, we might have seen Harlan just pass the turn back after playing a creature. Right. And also it's like Dark Ritual too while doing that. So a really powerful card for this deck. But luckily Harlan did have the Brutal Cathar lined up for it.
All right. We have Oath, we have Nissa, we have Karn. Let's see. Leading with Oath.
Taking a little look and get an elf.
All right. Well, with elf coming down this turn, Matthew's going to be looking at taking quite a bit more damage.
Yeah. And it's going to have a lot of mana. I think there's a Nykthos in Matthew's hand as well. So right now it's not making any mana, but we're one spell away from starting to get plus on mana there.
All right. And you're right about Lieutenant. So this is an attack for potentially 9. That might be a little hard to overcome.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot. And it might be a thing, too, where Harlan is able to push through even without a card like Brave the Elements on the next turn. Looks like Harlan has a Dauntless Bodyguard and is deciding, do I want this to grow my Lieutenant or have it be grown? Small thing, but these small things often matter a lot in Magic.
And if the Bodyguard is protecting the Brutal Cathar, then that kind of removes Matthew's best chance at best target for the Skysovereign. And in fact, it is. Here's Lieutenant, and yeah, this is a pretty good development, even without any Thalias, or well, any of the legendary Thalias for Harlan. Still, some disruption with Brutal Cathar and a pretty big clock.
Yep, and a lot of onus on Matthew's deck just to not perform here from Harlan. But even if it does do well, the cards like Brave the Elements off the top could fix that. And yeah, Matthew's like, nope, I don't got anything. Let's move on to game number 3.
Okay. So Matthew will get to go first for the first time in the match. And I mean, there's lots of potential there. Obviously, that last game that Brutal Cathar came down, if the Skysovereign came down before that, I mean, this is a very different outcome.
100%. Yeah, that play draw matters a lot. And we saw both players reaching for their sideboard. So we might have some play draw sideboarding happening there. Be interested to see what the mono green player will be doing. Maybe something like Shadow Spear actually comes in, be kind of a spicy one, or something like a Seeker's Chariot. Kind of good in this matchup, can clog the ground up a little bit like we saw in game number 1, but often a little slow to tutor for. So interesting to see.
So there may be a few options on the 1 or 2 cards that may be boarded in. Do you feel like you can say with confidence what the cards that get boarded out? You mentioned Teferi maybe would go out. Is there anything else that you don't want so much?
Yeah,
like first
you may. Yeah, there's some things like Sylvan Caryatid kind of blocks the 2/1s, right? But the problem is Harlan has both Thalia's Lieutenant and Luminarch Aspirant to grow. So that can sometimes be a plan that kind of falls through. So maybe you want something to replace those instead. But my guess is that Teferi is much more of a card for the mirrors. And it's kind of a way to really put your your pedal on the gas there and go fast. And in this matchup, going fast is important. But if you had a card to protect yourself, that might be a little better than Teferi, when Teferi is such an easily pressurable card in the matchup. Yeah.
All right. Well, they're shuffling up. We'll await the presenting the decks, which took a little while longer than we thought last game. In the meantime, once that's over with, if they're still playing, we'll shift over to the Angels versus the White Yorion deck. So what did we not see in this top 8? We didn't see a black-red deck.
No, I didn't see a black-red deck all weekend on coverage. We were going to cover Becky Bell in round 2, but she decided to go to the zoo after losing round 1. She was our only Rakdos player lined up, and I didn't even see many others. So, I mean, if, like Kane mentioned, right, there is some amount of perception on the tournament you go to, and the NRG series, we see a lot of mono green here. We see it everywhere, but we always see it here in our top 8s. You might be a little bit more afraid to play Rakdos in this field, as it was 20% of the field was your worst matchup in mono green. So, but that is the big one missing, Joe. And it's also, I think still very good. And some of the prominent red-black players, some of the innovators in the format, like Misplaced Ginger, say the matchup is actually not that bad if you dedicate the sideboard space to it.
Sure. Okay, players have drawn their hands for game 3. Let's go back to the table.
Yep.
Matthew Watts on the play with an oath. Okay, I mean, that's fine. Probably an elf would be better.
Yeah, it's looking like Watts has both Wolfwillow Haven and Old Growth Troll.
Mhm.
So I'm going to assume that's why we kept the hand. Maybe a little slow, but still able to produce that powerful Old Growth Troll.
Right. So draw here's okay. Another. I was going to ask, would you play the elf or do you play the Wolfwillow Haven? But drawing the oath might change that. Or I'm drawing the Okay, nope, it's still Wolfwillow Haven.
Yeah, I am a little inclined to play Elf because Elf has Summoning Sickness, but maybe you're waiting to respect something like Portable Hole or respecting Thalia from Harlan here. Want to get out underneath that.
Yeah. All right. So Thalia is into play here, and Matthew will have to deal with that. Draws, I think, another oath, which is much worse with Thalia in play.
Yeah. Luckily, Old Growth Troll forgives all sins.
Yeah. No, this is a really nice under the duress of Thalia here. That was a nice turn 3 for Matthew.
Yeah, and I think Harlan's hand is just 2 copies of Brave, 2 copies of Thalia, and a land.
Okay, well, 2 Braves isn't going to get anywhere close to the full damage through, so that's not going to work.
It looks like
all right.
Stone. Okay.
Well, that works.
Yeah, and this is really highlighting how important a card like Old Growth Troll is, not only when it comes to Nykthos and stuff like that, but just locking the battlefield up and not allowing Harlan to attack. Harlan has to sort of answer that here, even though you'd much rather answer a card like Cavalier of Thorns.
Mm-hmm. All right, land drawn for Matthew, which I don't think he had another one in hand, so maybe that's not the worst, although it's probably not the land he would have chosen.
Yeah, it's hard to complain about lands, but Matthew is honestly just looking for a payoff here. We have a good amount of mana, but nothing to really do with it. We do have the clue as well to look for some cards, but we're going to Legend Roll an Oath Anissa. I guess Kiora is a good one here because it's impossible to kill because it has 7 loyalty, and he lets you, kind of accelerate ahead on mana.
All right, potentially the elf to go with the other oath in hand to use all your mana for the turn, maybe?
I think so, and worth noting too that we put a Storm the Festival on the bottom of our deck there, so that's one less big draw for us.
And okay, it's another troll. All right, well, that added a sizable creature to the board and developed the mana.
Big here. Yeah, I love this from Harlan. I'm going to offer this Thalia. You have to block the Thalia, right? But Harlan's like, I have a bunch of Thalias. It's totally fine. I guess the real question is, will Matthew see through this snap attack? Because Harlan also has a Eiganjo in hand.
And it's going to be a double block. So if this pulls out the... Okay, no Brave the Elements cast. We'll just reset the board.
Yeah, maybe it was. I thought he had an Eiganjo as well, but it's either way, getting the Thalia through and kind of minimizing the mana, a pretty reasonable spot to be.
But I like Matthew's choice to trade off the elf for the bodyguard. He doesn't have any need for the extra mana at this point.
Yeah, and you have a bunch of cards like Oath Anissa, like Clue, that are probably going to find a land anyways, or a land-like card. There's another Old Growth Troll.
All right.
Honestly, this card is so key in the deck.
Kiora in hand here can... no, I'm sorry, cannot, because of the Thalia. And Matthew's realizing the same thing. So you can't play both.
Yeah, but with the one Old Growth Troll in play, you could probably just play the Kiora with so much loyalty, right?
You could play Kiora and be able to activate the clue, although I don't expect to see that given that the other troll attacked. Oh, okay. All right, there's another way to go to untap the troll.
Love this play.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, I was saying it there for a second. Old Growth Troll is so nice in this deck because it does all the things we talk about stopping aggro decks, but it also just gives your deck a fail rate of, okay, I'm not really drawing much, but a 4/4 trample is so big, and if you kill it, you get another 4/4 trample.
Yeah, and that was a blank turn for Harlan here with 2 Brave the Elements and that other Thalia, I believe, in hand. And this is getting away from him. As Matthew picks up a card, he's also got that clue still on the board.
And I picked up a Storm in the Festival for the turn here, so this is what happens. This is the low amount of fail rate that Harlan's deck does have. Typically, one of the things we praise about the mono white deck here is that it has such a low fail rate, and a lot of the decks in Pioneer have a high fail rate, and it just kind of kills you in that time. We saw Harlan float out, but it still wasn't a huge problem. While here, Matthew is just, I'm gonna hit you, and you eventually die.
Yeah.
And Harlan's really close.
Matthew passing again. Maybe intentions of sacrificing the clue end step. Brutal Cathar choosing between trolls. I'm sure Matthew doesn't care too much. Losing one of those, he's still. I mean, this is just Harlan trying to stay alive here. This isn't even Harlan really attempting to kill Matthew.
Yeah, Harlan's just buying time and kind of hoping. Matthew's deck does have a good amount of lands. It does have a good amount of essentially lands, right? Things like Llanowar Elf. And kind of has to hope that, okay, Matthew has a couple bad draw steps. I have a couple, great draw steps, and I'll take over the game. But Storm the Festival was a great draw step.
Yeah, I think there's actually another one in hand. So that looks like a lot of land.
Yeah, I think one is a Nykthos, but even if it is a lot of lands, the good part about Storm is it has flashback, right? So we're getting so close to doing it again.
Okay, Cavalier's good too.
Yeah, Cavalier, another Kiora, draw a couple cards, Legend Rule, get some more devotion. Sounds nice.
So this will actually net Matthew 2 cards because of the way this works, which seems very unintuitive to me, but I'm reliably informed that this is how it works.
Yeah, since they enter at the same time, the Legend Rule stack thing happens, but the abilities are triggered. It's very odd.
You can see the judge off camera there slightly waving his arms, saying, yep, draw 2. So 2 cards to the good, and Cavalier. There's a Nykthos.
Yeah, and that Nykthos is going to be played and
can be activated right now.
That's true.
Guess we still have an attack too. I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, we might see Harlan's in this awkward place where he can brave in order to block, and then the Old Growth Troll is dead, but it goes on a land to make more mana for the future.
Yeah.
So we did kill the Old Growth Troll. Yeah, and we do have we can untap one of our double lands and then activate Nykthos. So
yeah.
To have 7, 8, 9 devotion.
Actually, I think it's 10.
Oh, that's a Wolfwillow under that. Yeah. Wolfwillow gets me every time.
So it's 10. The cards in hand are plentiful for Matthew. It's going to be Cavalier first, so 5 floating. Oh boy.
Yeah, we get to draw from the Kiora and get something like another Nykthos and wrap it up. But also, another Storm the Festival. It's going to take a lot of mana, but luckily I think we'll be able to do it. Matthew drawing an L out on the table with his graveyard, notifying Harlan that that's what's about to happen to you.
All right, so Harlan does get the turn back. Brave the Elements does allow all his creatures to get through, which is currently a grand total of 4 damage.
Yeah, and Harlan
can't even kill Kiora.
Yeah, we have the Thalia as Lieutenant, but it's just not enough. Even if we could activate Shefet Dunes and do it all, we're just a little bit too far behind.
Yeah, and Harlan knows this, and he's looking at his cards right now, and he realizes that Matthew's deck is not going to contain itself on the next turn with 2 Storms in the graveyard, and I think a third one in hand, and oodles of mana.
And this might be what Harlan needs is, once again, Harlan is really hoping for the 0.001%, right? Where these Storm of the Festivals just get more lands and don't do anything. But getting the Brute to go back into Brutal Cathar, remove something, could be the first step in trying to salvage this game.
Okay.
It's unlikely, but it is the only way.
Yeah.
There's also the problem of we have large creatures.
Right. All right, so here is Nykthos for
probably 13.
14, I think.
Oh, we played an elf as well last turn. Okay. I thought we just only had a Cavalier.
So
what if we calved again? How about that?
I mean, we have Karn in hand. We could
I mean, Matthew
Yeah.
has the combo.
Whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, for those at home who are curious and maybe you're like, oh, what do I have to do to actually combo? I'm not going to tell you the whole thing, but if you have 8 devotion, 2 a Karn in the graveyard, a Karn in hand or play, same for Kiora, you have the win. You just have to go through it all. And we hit another Nykthos, making that L bigger, really trying to let Harlan know, but Harlan is going to make Matthew do it. You know, I'm sure if Matthew says, hey, I'll start comboing, Harlan will not make Matthew play it out, but Matthew is going to have to say, I'm going to start comboing. Matthew's board presence too big. The camera cannot even see it, but a little help we can.
All right, Karn Great Creator into play. Some amount of mana floating, way more mana available. Kiora unused as of yet.
Chain Veil be lethal.
I believe the Caryatid was in the sideboard there.
Nice. All right, Skyboat. Brr. That's what a boat sounds like, Joe. I don't know. What's your best boat noise?
You know what? I don't think I have one. I don't
Respectable. Have a nice day.
I don't have a boat noise. And there it is. Harlan's going to save me from having to try and come up with one on the spot by just conceding the game. I had given myself 5 or 10 more seconds, I would have done it, but I guess we'll save that for another month, another day. That's good. All right. Harian Firer, the run ends there. But we have one finalist, and there's chances are the other match isn't done. So let's go ahead and check it out.
Yeah, let's go show down to Adam. Congratulations to Matthew there, by the way, making it to the finals.
Yeah.
Big accomplishment.
Okay.
And I imagine we're going to be in the middle of a complicated board state. Not as bad as I was guessing.
Really? No.
Okay, yeah. So Nathaniel won game 1 over Adam.
All right. So let's see where we're at here in game number 2. We see a card in the graveyard, Skysovereign in play, which probably got wished for alongside Thraben Inspector. And Nathaniel, 22. So Righteous Valkyrie is not on turbo mode yet, but not too far away.
And, you know, for Nathaniel, we don't want to count our chickens before they hatch or anything, but the mono green matchup traditionally very good for you. So in a lot of ways, you need to clutch out and play your best here. And then in the finals, you need to also bring your best, but you're at least going to have the matchup advantage there.
Well, that was the combination of Bishop of Wings and Righteous Valkyrie is a lot of bonus life. This Skysovereign now actually doesn't kill anything.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe the Spirit Token. Does it kill the Spirit Token? Yeah.
Yeah, the Spirit Token's at 3, so that's it. I think we're also getting slammed at for 10.
Oh, yeah, we're getting, this is a big attack. Here's another Angel for life gain, which is a 5/5, I think.
Yeah.
With the Righteous Valkyrie. And okay. For people that wanted to see the Angel mono white matchup, we got you a few seconds of it there.
Yeah. And that is one of the things about the mono white deck that you have to remember is it kind of is good if the game's about the board state, right? And it generates a lot of incidental value. And then what kind of happens is your Skycliff turns into this weird 2-for-1, your Charming Prince gets your little value and then trades with something. And if the game is about that, then your deck is a lot stronger. And we thought that was what might happen with the Izzet deck. And that's why I was a little worried when it came to that matchup. But we see it happening here where, you know, Nathaniel was able to just present a bunch of flyers, not really care about the battlefield. And you're trying to make cards like Charming Prince line up. And it's just too hard when the match is too short for that to matter.
Yeah. All right. Our finals is set. We're going to step away for a moment and then we'll be back and see who goes home with the trophy of the Energy Pioneer 5K this weekend. Thanks for being here. Follow if you're enjoying the content. We'll be right back.